This mutation is called Diplomatic Immunity, and it is being played on Oblivion Express. We have 3 mutators active. We have Polarity, we have Evasive Maneuvers, and we have Barrier. So, let us have a look at the masteries while the players get set up. Han Horner has gone for 30 points in the Strike Fire Platform Mastery, 30 points into the Double Salvage Chance Mastery, and 30 points into the Magmine Cooldown Reduction Mastery, and they have gone for the Chaotic Power Couple Prestige. Raynor, on the other hand, has gone for 30 points into the Research Cost Reduction, a 10-20 split into the Hyperion Cooldown, Banshee Cooldown Mastery, and a 20-10 split into the Medic Healing and the Mech Attack Speed Mastery here, and Raynor has picked the Backwater Marshal Prestige. So, I want to talk a little bit about the mastery selections here for Raynor. Personally, I prefer the Banshee cooldown mastery, and I feel the Medic Heal mastery is a little bit better when you're going for biocentric play. But more importantly, the Backwater Marshal Prestige here is not very useful if you are playing on missions that are a little bit longer. So even though your bio units are a little bit stronger, your lack of access to orbital command centers means that or the mules from the orbital command centers, it means that you're not able to remax your army should you lose them. And usually this prestige is only useful when you are playing very, very short missions and you're able to rush through. I think Lilaran, who is pretty much one of the best Raynor players on the planet, he did a little bit of analysis and he found something like an 8 to 10 minute mark where if the mission time goes past that, then P1 Raynor is not as good as his P0 counterpart. So that is the only thing I would bring up here. Han Horner, Chaotic Power Couple Prestige, really nice prestige here for selection. So let us talk now a little bit about the mutators that are at play. Polarity is going to be the toughest mutator on this mission, and this is going to be the thing that will be giving a lot of problems to people who choose to try and enter the random queue when they are doing this mutation. So Polarity, every single enemy unit will have a particular polarity assigned to it, and this includes the trains. And before, which is, at least a year or so ago, polarity would affect each train carriage individually, so both players could attack trains. But however, now polarity applies to the entire train, and it means that player 1 will have to deal with train number 1 by itself. So take that into consideration when you are queuing up with your allies. So in this case, player 1 is Han Horner, so train number 1 is going to be Han Horner's train to clear, and you have to make sure that your ally is able to clear their train out first if you are playing in player 2's side. So that is something to take into consideration. And the other thing as well is, as you can see here, is that these polarity units can just simply ignore all the units that come here, and unfortunately Raynor does whiff on that Banshee airstrike, but he'll be able to clear out the rest of his units. This is where polarity can get really annoying. Your army usually has to be able to tank a lot of damage. Now, the fact that Raynor has gone for the Backwater Marshal Prestige is going to make it a little bit easier. He's going for the Devouring Scourge composition as well. It does make their units a little bit more tanky and make them a little bit more... It allows them to be able to tank a lot more damage than they would normally do, but remember, all it takes is one bad engage, and if Han Horner loses their army and they're unable to clear, Raynor's army is going to be sitting there and they're going to be taking a lot of damage. And this is usually why going for P0 is a lot better. You can just remax your army and macro up on the back of this. So we have the space station reallocation that gets dropped. As you can see over here, this is Han Horner's train, and they will have to send their units over to clear. And now for the most part, I think everything, all the escort units have been cleared out here. Raynor dropping down a few of the guys behind here, and Han Horner is going to move back out of the way here so they can just deal with this. And you can see evasive maneuvers being a little bit annoying. And now one of the things to note as well is because evasive maneuvers is active, it causes these enemy units to jump around, and it means splash damage is a lot less effective against these units. You can see the barrier also being applied to the trains here. So Han Horner will have to try and deal with this. There's an attack wave on the way. They have already put down a few of the Magmines, but this is just the initial attack wave, and this initial attack wave will actually end up triggering all these Magmines, and none of these Magmines are able to deal damage, but we have another set of Magmines over here. This should be able to clear out a good chunk of the units. And pretty much all the Zerglings have been killed off. There's just one last Mutalisk over here, a little bit annoying, and actually does manage to survive the Magmines, but you can see Raynor unable to do pretty much anything over here. Just finally clear this out and set another set of Magmines to try and deal with that Mutalisk. Now we have another attack wave on the way. Raynor getting into position, and they will also be ready to try and deal with this next attack wave. So far so good, and not really going too bad. This is going to be Raynor stuff, and he's just going to shred through these Zerglings. One of the really nice things is the Firebat has 420 HP, and this is not even considering his later on the armor upgrades that he will be getting throughout the course of the mission. And once Raynor starts getting that, his Firebats just become absolutely insane. They'll be able to tank out a lot of units, and especially when you're up against Zerg composition, Firebats, really nice units to have. Anhorner has their Call in the Fleet ready. Now, unfortunately, Starfire platforms are not going to be as effective with dealing with this mutation, but remember that you can set the objective on fire, so Napalm upgrade might be something that Anhorner may want to take into the later stages of the game. We have the Hyperion that gets used as well over here. Now, unfortunately, I think this Hyperion was used a little bit too prematurely. I think the Hyperion may have been a little better delayed a little bit, because now this thing is going to time out. There's already 60 seconds. It's already at 30 seconds left now on the timer, so the Hyperion may actually time out before these units actually engage, and it would be nice to have the buff that applies to the rest of these guys. So it applies a little buff called the Advanced Targeting System. It increases the attack damage of all nearby units. Hyperion now charging in with the rest of Raynor's army and Anhorner's army as well. Just they're getting the extra buffs here with the Advanced Targeting Systems. And remember, like, Anhorner's Reapers deal an insane amount of damage if they're given the opportunity to do so. So they already have like a reasonably low base damage, but once you add a Raven, and especially with the Hyperion as well, their damage level goes up through the air. But remember, this is going to be Raynor's train, and Raynor has to deal with this, so we have a Banshee airstrike that gets used as well. And Raynor will be able to clear out this train without really any issues here, so that train will end up going down. And so far, so good. Anhorner pushing in a little bit, then has managed to draw a little bit of aggro of some of Amon's units, so we have a Mutalisk and an Aberration here, but you can see this jumping of the Aberration. This is what makes splash damage really difficult to use. So commanders like Alarak, for example, who do pretty well against Zerg compositions, they will be struggling with their Psionic Orbs purely because of evasive maneuvers. So whenever you're picking a commander, make sure that you're picking a commander that is reasonably effective against dealing with this. Commanders that have hit scan attacks tend to work really well. So Raynor, Anhorner, they tend to work really well, but it's just a little bit tricky. You have to make sure so that you do not end up getting wrecked by the competition. This is going to be a difficult mutation purely because of Polarity. If Polarity was removed, this mutation would pretty much be a joke. It would be completely unimpactful for the commanders. Polarity just makes mutations so much more difficult. So we have a third train on the way right now. It is going to be spawning and making its way towards the players, but these players are already in position. Again, you can see you have to keep your armies together, and Anhorner, Raynor, always in taking these engages together, because it can be absolutely catastrophic for your ally. Like, one of the things about Polarity is if you are not in position, your allies' units or your allies' Amon units are going to end up killing your units off, and then you have no army to help your ally out when they start getting pounded by your Amon units. And this is kind of why Polarity just overcomplicates everything. So we have Call in the Fleet that gets used. Call in the Fleet now will be starting to attack the train and take up pretty much all of the units that belong to Anhorner. So all that is left is for Raynor to just start charging in and clearing the rest of these units. There are a few more units over here. We have some Assault Galleons that have been upgraded as well to the Hangar Base, which is also going to make it a little bit nicer. Horner units, the Horner air units have been increasing cost because of the Prestige, but it should be okay. These extra Hangar Bay drones, I think what are they called? They're called like assault drones. These little assault drones will draw a little bit of aggro to Amon, so Amon will start to attack those drones instead of the army. So it's actually a really nice stall tactic as well. We have another train on the way here, and I don't know if that bonus objective is going to be done. Unfortunately, that refinery is on fire, but that refinery does end up getting repaired, and all is good. Now there's another attack wave on the way, and notice how these players have foregone this attack wave, the bonus objective. It's very important. They're well aware that if they were going to go for this bonus objective, this attack wave would catch them off guard, and they would be having a really hard time. So just the ability to adapt here is really important. Do not go for the bonus objectives unless you are really confident that you can do it, because otherwise you are going to be having a very difficult time, and you will end up losing a lot of your army. And unfortunately, some of the Scourge are making a beeline right for these Assault Galleons, but those medics for Raynor are actually providing a lot of value. They're actually healing up this Assault Galleon. Not only are they healing it up, they are also providing the Assault Galleon with a damage reduction buff, so that Assault Galleon pretty much soaked up all the Scourge from the attack wave that were not killed off by the rest of these units on the ground. and that has kept that assault galleon alive and saved a lot of the expensive resources here for Han Horner. And yeah, Han Horner is actually going for some more of the strike fire platforms right now. I'm actually trying to find them. I cannot seem to find where those strike fire platforms are. Okay, they're right on the edge there. So I think eventually Han Horner will start adding a few more strike fire platforms to the mix as soon as they are able to do so. But again, getting the air units there, the little tanky air units, which is kind of what you need as Han Horner against this composition, it's going to be a little bit tricky. Space station reallocation gets dropped here. Unfortunately, just a little bit too delayed, so its explosion is going to deal extra damage to the train, which is somewhat unfortunate, but eventually this train is going to end up going down. Once this train has gone down, the rest of this army will be able to push it. So Raynor has already actually started to prematurely push into the army, but Han Horner already cleared the top train. He's going to be moving in towards the Slenderman train now, and we have the Hyperion that gets used over here. You can see the Reaper damage now being buffed to a lot of damage, and I think there's also a Raven that gets added to the mix here. Remember, the Raven also provides a passive buff to to anything that's actually attacking a unit it has locked on. So there's a lot of damage output right now, and Raynor has managed to clear out the train reasonably well. So far, what are the units lost? Actually, not a lot of units lost here. We have 4 Marines, 2 Firebats, and 1 Medic for Raynor. And remember that they are using Backwater Marshal Prestige, so it's nice to see very low losses over there because you cannot replace his army as quickly as you would like. You have no mules, and you have nothing to actually remax your army if you were to lose, so Raynor has to be a little bit careful. He seems to be doing really well and making sure he's playing as humanely as possible for his army. And now we have another attack wave on the way. This attack wave is going to be grouping up over here. A few Marines standing a little bit outside of range. A few more Marines getting dropped right into the middle of the attack wave, unfortunately. And those Marines are going to end up going down. But now the rest of Horner's army is already in position, and they're going to be focusing down these Guardians and the rest of these Devourers. And the Guardians do teleport towards the army. Now, one thing to also actually, now that I mentioned it, one thing to note about evasive maneuvers is that evasive maneuvers, if you are attacking from a really long range, the evasive maneuvers will cause the Amon unit to jump towards your army, towards the attacking unit. And if you're attacking from a little bit too close, like for a melee unit, sometimes what can happen is evasive maneuvers will try and move a unit away. So you can see over here, this is being a little bit annoying, these Zerglings. So all Raynor has to do now is wait for his ally to get into position. Unfortunately, ally is not actually dealing with these Zerglings, so that's pretty much nothing they can do over here. They just have to sit and eat this damage until Horner gets into position. They're not actually moving in. I think Horner is not paying attention to the army. Okay, there we go. Now he's going to be moving in, killing off the rest of these Zerglings, and now these guys can actually engage together as a team. And now the next train is on the way, and Horner is now going to be using their next call down, which is call in the fleet. So they're just waiting a little bit. There we go. So that gets used right now. And that call in the fleet is going to be able to take out, again, a good chunk of their units that are Amon, that belong to Amon. So that should be pretty well. Train goes down. Train pretty much evaporated there right as these commanders have started to aggro them. And I think there's just a few more hybrids that need to be addressed over here. It's going to be a little bit tricky, but these commanders are just moving up a little bit. Try and reposition their armies, but yeah, a few hybrids over here, hybrid destroyers, nothing really too much to deal with, and for now is just going to go ahead and just take out the last of the hybrids. So overall, it seems to be pretty good. Now, the one thing I would also advise is if you are uncertain and if you're just a little bit unsure whether you can do the mutation, one thing that can increase your win rate as well is to just be familiar with the enemy attack wave timings and where they were spawning from. Train orders as well, really important, but attack waves are pretty important. It'll allow you to reposition your army in time. And you can see this is one of the reasons why I don't like U1 Raynor very much, is you run out of energy on your medics. So in the early game, like I said, your army isn't really taking too much damage when you have your combat shields and stuff, so it's not really a big issue. But in the later stages of the game, I usually find my medics to be extremely taxed and unable to heal my bio army. Like, that being said, so far Raynor seem to be doing okay. Unfortunately, those mag mines that got dropped have re-aggroed to the Polarity units, and they ended up getting cleared out. And now these commanders will have to try and deal with this attack wave by themselves without the help of those mag mines providing any support. And they'll infest on the front line as well. And so I think Horner has also added a few of the rates here. So those rates are going to be doing really well. Level 2 attack upgrades as well for both these commanders. And Raynor has also picked the armor upgrades, which is really nice to see. And what is Raynor going for? Yeah, he's going for his level 3 attack and armor upgrades. Unfortunately, they're queued up on the same engineering bay. Usually better to build a second engineering bay, and especially when you're flowing the resources, build a second engineering bay and just go for the upgrades side by side, because those upgrades are very valuable for your units. And you can see here 440 HP on this Firebat right now. This Firebat is tanky. And he's going to be able to take a lot of punishment here. So, top train gets engaged first by these commanders. We have the Hyperion that gets used. Hyperion now is going to be providing a damage buff to all these commanders. Raynor will have to try and deal with this train by himself. And we also have the space station reallocation available for Han Horner. And I think they might be using it on the southern train over here. Actually, or no, or not. So, again, like I said, maybe that space station reallocation would have been nice to use on this train here because there's a lot of units here in the escort way, but they should be able to handle this without any problems. Raynor's army already is just absolutely massive. He is supply capped and he's ready to go and clear out the rest of this train and the escorts around it. And now Han Horner just had to try and deal with the train. Han Horner actually does not really struggle dealing with these trains at all, even if they have the barrier buff. The units from Han Horner, they have a really nice damage output here, so it does help a lot. I think one of the other things I can show you the auxiliary stats is how like 50-50 it is. Like, Polarity, you're going to be expecting this with Polarity. Train damage may be a little bit higher for one player because they're the one that got the first train. So whoever's playing player 1 will get higher train damage, but should not be too much of a discrepancy here between these commanders and their total kill count. We can just see like Polarity is just pretty much 50-50. There is an attack wave coming up on the northern side that needs to be dealt with here, so this will have to get addressed at some point. And I think the... Okay, so I think this bonus objective train, I think the note on the submission was, please pretend like we actually killed off the train without actually... Because I think what happened is they left the train at a very low HP, and they went to try and engage this attack wave, and they thought they got the train. Yeah, 56 HP left on this train. So they could have gotten that, it was just a small mistake on their part. So they just said pretend. So everybody who was watching this YouTube video, just say, very nice clear on the train. Good job clearly taking out this train, and we'll just pretend like they got the second bonus objective there. That was a bit of a mistake, but that is fine. They were going for it. And now their attack wave is right on top of their bases. So we have battle cruisers now that get dropped over here. I'm not really sure whether these battle cruisers would be a good idea right now. There is nothing to help them, and you should never engage a Polarity attack wave by yourself because there is nothing to help you deal with these units. But Raynor does quickly stim in, and he gets into position, and he's going to be able to clear out the rest of this attack wave. And now there's a train on the southern side. I'm actually not sure why they just did. They could have probably just scrapped the expansion as well. I don't really think it was necessary to go for the expansion and protect the expansion, because by the time the attack wave clears out the expansion, they could have probably taken out the train as well, but they should be already in position here to try and deal with this. So these commanders now are going to be pushing in, and Han Horner already has a call in the fleet, so they should be using that sometime soon. And we also have a couple of strike fire platforms over here. Raynor charging in, Han Horner charging in as well, and they're just going to A-click, and now they have locked on their call in the fleet. Call in the fleet will get used over here, right there, and that is pretty much it. That is Call in the Fleet being used, and that's going to pick off a lot of the units, like the Guardians and the Devourers are dealing with some damage to Raynor's army. And actually, yeah, pretty well handled over there. That last train ends up going down. Not a lot of losses for Raynor here. Really nicely utilized his army here. He's lost a total of 7,500 minerals worth of resources. But those are all the trains cleared, and that is GG.